Hello and welcome to Game Warp. I'm your host as always, Elwood Jones, and I'm joined by my co-host and general partner in crime, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hey, how's it going?
And obviously we're recording this show coming off the PlayStation experience. You can read our highlights of the show available now on thatmomentin.com, our home base. So if you want to obviously see what games are really sort of shining for ourselves, you can read all that on thatmomentin.com. But as we've obviously come to this close, this first season of Game Warp, so we thought we'd look back at the previous 7 months and give our rundown of the top 6 games of which have really stood out for ourselves. And so this is our look back at Season 1, and obviously any of these reviews, if there's any of these games that sound interesting to you, you can find them all on our YouTube page, as well as you can find them on the home base as well, thatmomentin.com. So,
And I'll be sure to link them in the description below.
Cool. So without further ado, should we get on to number 6? Kim, what is at number 6?
Number 6 is Song of the Deep by Insomniac Games. I think that number 6 is a really good choice just because it kind of came out of nowhere and then we kind of picked it up and we were like, that's actually the only game on our list, which is really, really a new game that went on the market, and then the next month we played it, we reviewed it. And I mean, just there's so much that stands out. Yes, we did comment about how the game was slightly frustrating, but it's hard to ignore that we also nominated Marin as one of our 12 brutally cute characters in one of the lists that we did, as well as the fact that it's just artistically beautiful to look at, and the story is the lore and just everything behind it is so pretty and so attractive to listen to that just to see that it's worth your time to even just trek into the deep sea and follow Marin on her journey to save her father.
I totally agree. It's been a while since we've had a good Metroidvania style game, and this is a fantastic example of the genre. As you said already, it's a stunning game to look at. The story is really engrossing, especially the narration performed by Siobhan Hewitt, who does a fantastic job of creating this fairy tale-esque environment for the story to exist within. And as you go through, I mean, our main frustrations with this game was the repetitiveness of the puzzles, as well as the fact that objectives would always be at the opposite end of the map to the location you are. That being said, there's a lot of things to enjoy about this game. The customizations that you can add on to your sub, the villains that you encounter, and as we said, the colourful environments, and just the sheer scope of this game. There was constantly felt like there was something new to explore. It's just that repetitiveness that obviously stopped me wanting to rate this game higher. Even down to little simple things such as the crab which you buy your upgrades from waving at you as you complete your transaction. There's a lot of charm to this game, and it makes me interested to obviously see what Insomniac Games do next, really.
Insomniac Games has been on fire this year. I mean, they came out with Ratchet and Clank, and then they had their VR edition, which was Edge of Nowhere. Unfortunately, we don't own VR because we are poor, broke gamers that can't quite afford it just yet.
They're certainly one of the companies that are really sort of creating a lot of interest. I think the other one as we came away from the PlayStation experience of being very excited about would be Gearbox, especially now that they've decided to open their indie wing, and with their first project obviously took on the remastering of Bulletstorm. So within those two companies already we've got exciting things to look forward to as we go into 2017. No, this was a fun little indie game. It sort of came out of nowhere, and I think those who were sort of tapped into the indie scene sort of picked it up, and slowly I think people are slowly discovering it. But no, Song of the Deep, definitely a game worth discovering and checking out for yourselves.
So what is our number 5?
It's Batman Arkham Origins. often deemed as being the worst of the three of the Arkham games. This is actually a very underrated game in our opinion, and it's certainly something that came to light when we did our revisit of the game. Certainly a revisit for myself and first time play for yourself, Kim. And we obviously chose it for December because it's set at Christmas. So what better game could there be to obviously play during the Christmas season? And replaying it, it's so surprising why people are so down on this game. Yes, it perhaps isn't as good as Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, but at the same time, there's still a lot of charm. There's some interesting villains and some fantastic gameplay that's still retained with this game. Obviously, the major downside, though, would be with its map, with that horrible sections requiring you to go back and forth across Gotham Bridge, which really became something of a nagging irritant in it. But at the same time, this is a game which is bringing a lot of invention with it. When we have scenes such as the Mad Hatter sequence, which the game switches to a 2D side scroller, or perhaps the Firefly showdown on the bridge, where the camera angle switches from both your 3D aspect to again a 2D aspect to really give you this immersive fight sequence. But Kim, I mean, what did you obviously think of Batman Origins?
Well, I mean, we already talked about it in the review, and what makes me want to place this in in our top six and in the fifth position is that it really surprised me because this was my first time being in an open world game and being in this kind of Batman universe where the immersiveness is incredible, along with like the story that it's trying to build. So while maybe like for people who can compare it, to me, this is more of a standalone title in my mind. So I would put it right now, like at this point, just because like I can't judge it on the trilogy, but rather on just my experience. Obviously, if this is the bottom of the barrel, then I can only expect better with Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of like if you meet someone, it's always good to be a jerk to them the first time so that when you meet them and you're like in a good mood or just your normal self, it kind of balances itself out. So perhaps Arkham Origins could be seen as a comparison of this, but certainly with this game, I appreciate the fact that we weren't just going for the main heavy hitters of the Batman world. Yes, we have Penguin, we have the Riddler return as in a hacker form as Enigma. We also see the return of Joker, but the focus this time sees a lot of new villains being introduced. Most interestingly, Black Mask makes his first appearance in the video game world. We also saw villains such as Deathstroke, Copperhead, and Lady Shiva also making their debuts within the Arkham universe, and it really brought something new rather than just battling the same villains that we've seen in the previous two games. So this is certainly a very underrated title, and yes, while it is flawed, it's certainly one that is well worth discovering, and especially if you were a fan of the previous two, a great way to round out this initial trilogy before obviously you update your equipment if you haven't done already so you can play Arkham Knight. What's at our number 4 slot?
So our number 4 is another indie game, obviously, because it's me. And that's Unravel, which is our kickoff game for this season of Game War. And Unravel is amazing because it's a puzzle platformer game where it focuses around a little yarn boy called Yarny, who is just a ball of who's made of red yarn and runs through these different scenarios while collecting memories of I don't know if it's collecting or retrieving memories for the woman that I don't know, he resides with, who owns him or something, you know? And he goes through these environments that are beautiful, and they're based out of, I believe it's Sweden.
Yes, that's right. The Swedish production company Cowood Interactive developed the game while it was put out through Electronic Arts, and in many ways led to them launching their indie wing that we obviously saw announced at E3 this year.
For sure. I mean, Unravel is just, I think that, the next game that we definitely will be looking for is called Fee, and that was covered in E3, which we're really looking forward to seeing, hopefully having more news come out soon. I mean, Unravel is a beautiful game. It's charming music. It's just, it's funny because Yarny is actually one of the characters which came to my mind the first, of being in a very brutal situation, but also being able to, kind of get out of that by his abilities, but still you can't help but feel that they really like make the danger very apparent at the same time, and you connect with a yarn boy, and that's something that's really hard to imagine, and you see the world at the level of his eyes pretty much. So like in the even just in the first level when you see like a little hedgehog trudge past, or like just you're standing in like, you know, the top of the mountain and you hook onto a garbage bag and then you fly through the sky. It's a really fun game which creates a good bit of challenge.
Oh, definitely. I feel that many people may mistake this game as being a little childish because of its general good nature. This is a game which is just so charming to play, and it's the idea that it works on very simple principles of the idea of Yanni using his own body, so he can create lassos, he can create ropes to build bridges or to swing across gaps, and this is such a throwback to a simpler time for gaming, and I think that's what's so charming about it. Yes, it has these darker moments to it, and from the surface, it can seem very sort of simplistic and very childish, such as like Little Big Planet. But there's a real depth to this game, which I absolutely adored, in just how the puzzles can often catch you out through how they seem so simple, and the fact that you can be caught out by using too much yarn, so you can be pulled back from making a particular jump, requiring you to go back and find ways to be more conservative with the amount of yarn. This game should also be noted as being the first and only time we attempted a creative challenge with a game, as our attempts to create our own yarn boy, Kim did a very good job. I created an abomination.
Which you didn't even post up, right?
It's somewhere around here, like just crawling around in like frayed limbs and stuff. It's not pretty. So yeah, I think on that note, we should just move on to our next game. Okay, and number three, we have the episodic adventure, Life is Strange. This was the game which we originally intended to make our first featured game when we first launched Game Warp, and it was actually the game which brought myself and Kim together looking for a project to work together on, and somehow we stumbled into creating a podcast. Lucky for ourselves, it's been turned into this wonderful project, and it's been an absolute joy to create and build Game Warp into what we have now and what we continue to try and grow. But Life is Strange is a 5-part episodic adventure. Focuses on Maxine Caulfield, who's a photography student, and she discovers that she has the ability to rewind time and in turn change things that happen around her. Now, this game, it comes with a real sort of tone to it. It's kind of like playing a lighter version of Twin Peaks, as you're in this small town of Arcadia Bay where dark things are afoot. Along the way that you follow Max as she meets up with other characters, and she uncovers more of these secrets that are hiding within the town. In particular, she hooks up with her childhood friend Chloe Price, here voiced by Ashley Birch, who probably most of you will know from voicing Tiny Tina in Borderlands 2. She also did a web show, Hey Ash, What You Playing, as well. She's done numerous voice projects, and she's the real sort of standout voice here. But this is an absolutely fantastic game that goes in many different directions than you would initially expect. It's never quite the straightforward thriller that you would expect it to be, as it incorporates elements of time travel, as well as to be expected, the element of the butterfly effect, as every action has a knock-on effect. So just because you choose to change one outcome doesn't mean that it's not going to have an effect on something else. It also contained one of the most diversive endings of all time, where what you would consider to be the right decision ended up making the game feel like you made the wrong choice, especially when the so-called bad choice had what felt more like a proper ending to it. But Kim, I mean, what did you think of Life is Strange?
Well, I mean, I think Don't Nod Entertainment did an amazing job on Life is Strange. Of course, this wasn't like, obviously, no game is, I don't think we've ever reviewed a perfect game yet. There's always something that's, well, let's hold that thought because it's still number two and one. But for now, I think that Life is Strange is a great, like, I think it's because, like, the anticipation for Life is Strange is also really huge. Like, it has such a good review from a lot of people who played it. And on top of that, like you have this it's not it's not like a love kind of thing. Although many people started like trying to, ship Chloe and Max, and they did, in a situation you could have let them kiss, and that could have been whatever, but the deal is that this isn't really focused about love relationships as it is about friendships. And on top of that, they were able to not only craft rebuilding a friendship, but at the same time also crafting a mystery thriller in the background. That I thought that it keyed really well together. And then they were able to take like something that could feel like a repetition and a dragging on story and turn it and add different mechanics and different puzzles that kind of changed up the game a little and made it keep being as interesting as it should be, and kind of giving you the power to kind of solve whatever puzzle you had to do. And I mean, not only that, but I mean, just Life is Strange carries like a I don't know, it's also like the people in Arcadia Bay is not only just Max and Chloe, but also like the different people you learn and the focus on photography. Like you could have taken pictures of all sorts of things, and that would have like keyed different things in. And I really like that aspect and like that story of it. Maybe because I'm kind of like a amateur photographer that I have a special interest in this as well. But I think like just the idea of time travel, of like butterfly effect, of that sort of thing is an intriguing topic to put together and to see and to kind of like feel like to make it flow. I think the biggest trouble with anything relating with time is to make the story viable with and believable to the audience. And I think this one does a really good job at that. And that's why Life is Strange for us is number three, because not only is the gameplay mechanics is good, but the story is also very believable.
Mm. It's an absolutely charming story that you have, and the fact it can go into such dark places from where you start and where it ends, you would never be able to tell the journey that this game will take you on. And even just simple things such as Max and Chloe walking along the train tracks, scenes such as when you're in the diner and Max is trying to prove her time travel abilities to Chloe, and that you have to hit certain events as they happen or before they happen. It really brought something about this game, and the fact it's complemented by such a fantastic voice cast only really adds to the story. And I think this is the game that people tend to play and then instantly they want to go and find someone else to talk about it, because it's one of those games that leaves an impression on you, be it good or bad. You will come away with something about this game, or at least an opinion of some sort, to say the least. So
I think that you make a really good point. I think that one last thing I want to point out is that what makes Life is Strange stand out is the fact that you want to talk to people about it because you want to know what the other person chose and how it changed. But then it also creates the incentive of wanting to go back because it's such a charming story and play that episode again and see if you can achieve whatever alternate possibilities and what dialogue would go out of that. See who you can save, see who else will die as a possibility of dying or whatever.
I think that this idea that games are now focusing so much on storyline, I think it only further reflects in our final two choices on this list. But what made our number two slot, Kim?
Number two is Inside, and I actually think we actually like me and our guest reviewer Greg. We actually gave this, maybe it was one of the highest rated out of everyone. I don't know if it beat number one, but it might. I don't remember the ratings we gave right now. I have to look at that. But our number two is Inside by Playdead, which is the spiritual successor of Limbo. Inside is amazing because quite opposite from Life is Strange, and what makes it even more impressive than Life is Strange is the fact that there is no narrative. Your narrative is in your exploration, in the deductions you make as you travel through this weird game, of a little boy trekking through a dark world, and you're getting inside, you go through things and you see pigs and weird worms that possess them and like zombie-like creatures that you can do mind control, and you head into a facility and you start seeing more, and then you start seeing that whole underwater place that they enter, and you have a little submarine that you can go in, and just all these things that build up to the final section where you turn into what Elwood loves the best is a raging blob. Is crazy. You know, like it's a mind-blowing experience in how so much can be conveyed with puzzles that were sometimes a little tricky, but challenging enough to make it like worth your time. And also just the mystery and being able to build that mystery and impact onto the gamer themselves.
Inside is certainly an ambitious follow up to Limbo. We perhaps made the mistake of playing both Limbo and Inside essentially back to back, so it was kind of a dark month for ourselves. Inside, though, really takes what was successful with Limbo and builds upon it. Again, we have that sort of abstract storyline, and this is one of those games, again, like Life is Strange, that if someone had found out that you played Inside, they instantly want to sit down and discuss what it all means with you. And I think a good part of that particular episode where we looked at Inside was just dedicated to looking at what the story actually means. While perhaps this might not have been my favorite game of the year, and I may have certainly had my issues with it, I can certainly at the same time understand why people do like this game. As not isn't it again a very stunning game to look at. It's got this real sort of atmosphere, and it's got its own story as such that you can interpret in many different ways. And I think that was one of the reasons that I'm rating it so high with yourself, Kim. It's the fact that you have got this intriguing story, and there is no right or wrong answer in how you interpret it. Like all the best of like works, such as like David Lynch, his films can be interpreted in many ways. Inside is exactly the same, and the fact that this game has got so many little moments that are peppered throughout it, such as in the finale where you crash through the ceiling and you smash into a diorama of what essentially is the final scene of the game, bringing into question of, do you actually escape, or is this just another part of the facility that you're trapped within? It's frustrating the fact that this game ends on what feels like a cliffhanger, but at the same time, it's the only ending they could have for this game. I essentially don't want it to be explained as to what this all is happening. I kind of like this idea that it gives you the ideas and leaves you to discuss it with your friends and that. So I think Inside is well-deserved number 2 on our list. I think it's a game that people are either going to love or perhaps not understand what the fuss is about, but it's certainly a game of note, and it shows that not all noteworthy games are AAA titles, and that the indie scene is just as interesting a place, especially in these times and going into 2017, that there are games coming out of the indie market that are just as important as the AAA titles.
So the big question right now is when Playdead is going to come out with their next installment. Like they had, I think, what, a good 6 years gap between this one and and their last game and this one, right? In the Game Awards that just passed, and when they won the best art direction, they came out and said that they are playing with a few ideas right now. They're constructing something at the moment. So it has me wondering when they might even throw out a teaser trailer to see when things come out. But if we know Playdead style, just like Inside, they'll give you the most abstract teaser trailer ever and then just launch the game for you to fully experience what's going on.
Oh, definitely. I think I'm also very interested to see what direction Playdead go, especially since the co-founder and former CEO, Dino Christian Pantier, has now obviously left the company and sold his shares over to Arndt Jensen, the co-founder of the company. So I mean, obviously, Pantier felt that by leaving Playdead, and to quote him, said he was leaving it in a state where it can definitely manage itself. He left the company very much on good terms, and I'm just obviously very curious to know which direction that Jensen chooses to take the company. Will we still stay on this dark path with Playdead games? Will we see something lighter from them, something maybe a little more colourful, or are we still going to stay in these muted black and white tones? It's exciting to obviously see. I mean, obviously, the time between games is it's a little frustrating for the fan base. I mean, Limbo's released in 2010. We then have to wait 6 years for the release of Inside, which in itself is not an overly long game. It's about, if you did a quick playthrough, you're looking, what, 3-4 hours?
Mm-hmm.
So where they go next, I'm certainly excited to see, and to see what they choose to do next. So
Yeah. So with that said, we have number one. And what is that?
number one is Oxenfree.
Woohoo!
This was a game which Kim highlighted to myself when we were compiling the original list of games we wanted to cover on this show. Kim, obviously being the queen of independent game reviewing, had all these titles, and she was just like, "Oh, we should totally cover Oxenfree. We should cover Everybody's Gone to the Rapture." And myself being, Mr. Retro Gamer, the AAA guy, I was like, "What the hell are all these games?" And
And
then,
then you're like, what the heck is Oxenfree?
but when I saw Oxenfree, it was like, we have to play this game, and it was phenomenal to see a game that looked as artistically original as Oxenfree does, with its minimalistic art style, its dialogue in comic book speech bubbles, and all this telling the story of an actually scary ghost story of these five friends on this island, slowly discovering the secrets which hide within. I was totally blown away by this game. This isn't just my top five for this show. For the 2016, Oxenfree is my top game. This is a truly wonderful experience play, and I'm probably not doing it justice here, but no, Oxenfree is one of those games that obviously came out for the independent market. It came out at the start of the year, and it slowly, through word of mouth, started to gain a sort of cult following behind it. It's so hard to talk about this game without ruining the game, so just go play the game. That's all I'm saying. Go get Oxenfree now. But Kim, what did you think of Oxenfree?
It is really hard to talk about this game, but all I can say is that if it's hard to say that without ruining it, but I think that Oxenfree is one of those games where you think it's very linear, but it actually isn't. And on top of that, it'll make sure that you will keep playing it over and over again. For those who don't know, because I actually recorded the episode for the review of Oxenfree, and we did that review, and I remember giving it a pretty high score, maybe like a 4 or 4.5, something like that. But from then till now, it is definitely my game of the year as well, just because, game of my life, right now. Because the amazingness in Oxenfree is in your second run, you will realize that the story changes. No one realizes because no one actually did it, but it changes a little. It actually retains what you did in the first playthrough that you did in a certain way. And you will only realize what I mean when you actually finish playing it once and replay it a second time. And you can see if you can get what is considered a good ending. And with a lot of help, actually, I was on Twitch streaming my second run, and one gamer dropped by, and we actually went into a brainstorming session where he walked me through a lot of the secrets that I didn't know about. And when you uncover all these secrets, new things open up. And on top of that, I ended up, together with this person brainstorming, we figured out the good ending, and it was such a fulfilling feeling. It was just amazing to be able to achieve it. And on top of that, even after achieving that good ending, there are days I still want to go back and just play the game again because of just the charming characters, and just their dialogue is so fun because it ranges. You can take the bitchy route, you can take the really nice route. You can take kind of like the humbler route as well. And it's whatever, type of thing. You have all these characters that kind of balance themselves out so well to make the story like you can care about. And you're right. And it also has this really scary element that kind of gets to you. One of the sequences that stands out is definitely The one where we're in a chalkboard right at the beginning of the game, and the ghost haunts Jonas. Yeah, Jonas. He haunts Jonas, and then you have to try and save Jonas, but the ghosts are like, oh, you don't know they're ghosts yet, but they're talking to you, and they're like, oh, you need to solve these puzzles and know these things. And then you realize that, oh my God, I actually didn't pay attention to the touristic places through the radio that I was supposed to listen to and the details. And oh my God, what if I forget what's going to happen? And you're playing a game of Hangman, and you're like, oh my God, what if I killed Jonas? And you're just in this world where it's so amazing. You don't know, like you go up into loops, you go up into dream worlds, you get swapped around. It's it's such a mind-blowing and intriguing experience. I literally there were days like I didn't want to put down my controller and I wanted to just keep playing. And I think I blew through this game in like 3 days. I finished the game, the first run through in like 3 days or something.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. It's just such an intriguing story that you keep wanting to know more. You keep wanting to know who you want to save, who can you save, and you just it's just amazing. Like I love the feeling of playing that game, and thinking about it just makes me want to go back and pick it up and play it. And I cannot recommend this game highly enough. You know, it's amazing.
As you said, there's so many aspects to this game, and it looks again like Unravel. It looks so simplistic on the surface, but when you get into this game and you see how these characters evolve over the course of this story, especially through dialogue, the dialogue option, so you can have characters get together, or you can choose to not have them form these relationships. We've got our main character who is Alex, and she's going across the island with her new brother Jonas, and you can through your dialogue you can choose whether they grow closer and form like a brother sister relationship, or they just stay two separate people. And there's so many locations throughout this game which are just atmospherically so chilling and haunting to be in. As you mentioned already, you've got the Hangman game that you're forced to play. There's characters who get possessed. The sound in particular for this game really puts you on edge, and I don't think since playing like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, those sorts of games, that I've been so genuinely unnerved by a game. It really gets under your skin, and you wouldn't think from its day glow graphics that this game would be capable of such a thing. So I'm very excited to obviously see what the company obviously does, Night School Studio. Obviously do. I mean, they've obviously worked on the mobile game for Mr. Robot, and currently at the moment there is plans in place to make a film adaptation of the game, which I'm very kind of excited to see.
Yeah.
How
Yeah, that was what I was gonna actually talk about next, because it's through the research for preparing for this that I realized that actually that's actually old news for some people, because it was announced in January 2016. So I'm really like, if they make a game for if they make a movie for Oxenfree, I'm in. Right now all I gotta say is good job, Night School Studio. I am your fan. Like, I am ready for anything next that's coming up. So that's all I really have to say about that.
Cool.
I just love the game so much. Oxenfree is an amazing experience, and I was happy that it got a nomination in the Game Awards. I was pretty fairly certain against the competition it had that it wasn't going to win, but there was a moment of disappointment, because while like I had this, people correct me, and I don't want to say that it's an equally deserving, because I haven't played the winner, Uncharted 4, but for best narrative, I really think that Oxenfree does, like, for me, it did best narrative of the year. As like most of our choices in this game, it's very narrative based, and you can see like a certain style. Obviously, I'm hoping that, I think next year we're drafting in a lot more wider variety of games. So we're going to try and hit more genres than this year, but we're still going to pretty much do a lot more of indies, and I'm pretty excited on doing that. With that said, I do urge anybody listening, if you have any game suggestions for us to play or to review, shoot us an email or tweet us or leave us a message on Facebook, and we'll definitely try and work that into our schedule.
Right, well, there you have it. Oxenfree is our number one game of season one of Game Warp. Obviously, all the reviews, as we mentioned already, you can find both on the YouTube channel as well as thatmomentin.com. So, if any of these games sounded of interest to yourselves, make sure to go back check the reviews. We will obviously have the links in the description below as well to make it a little easier for yourself.
And with that said, this wraps up this episode of our top 6 games and notable mentions of 2016. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, and please comment. Tell us what games you would recommend for us to play and what were your game of the year in 2016. We'd love to hear any feedback. And head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read more gaming reviews. We also cover first looks and impressions of events and whatnot. To get all gaming news and releases every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. To watch our episode on the go, you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Podomatic. So thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time. Bye!